Welcome to Flat Earth Debate Live. I'm your host, Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe. Hit the bell notification icon and join button if you'd like to become a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member and keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you would like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they are live, and there's also a PayPal, Patreon, crypto, and thanks button in the info box below the video. Most importantly, if you'd like to join the discussion, simply mute the page you are currently watching, then click the link in the info box below this video to join the panel and express your views on the nature of Earth. If you do join, please don't swear. If you do, you'll be ejected, and if you are, please don't try to rejoin the stream using sock accounts. You'll be warmly welcome back on the next stream. Please also share the show on social media. Sharing the show obviously increases the live audience, but this in turn increases the chances of a more diverse panel, so please share the show on Facebook and X. Now we are joined by 10th Man, Original D-Rose, Refracted Curvature, Righteous Force, Neil Cosentino, the Adam Meekin, and a whole bunch of people in Discord, so welcome one and all.
Buenos dias. Buenos dias.
Good morning, good morning. That's a good buenos dias.
Hola, ¿qué tal?
Bien, muy bien. You too?
Gracias, gracias.
You got to finish it off with
Moving on,
buenos dias,
any scientific evidence of gravity?
No scientific evidence of Venus dias.
Gravity?
What is gravity?
We don't need no stinking gravity.
That was
Can you
good.
tell me what gravity is?
The bending of a fourth-dimensional pseudo-geometric time invented by Einstein as a result of the uneven
So how does
distribution
that-
of mass. My bad. Bloody hell, Neil.
So how does that keep me on the Earth, and how does that keep all the oceans on
Oh,
the
it
Earth?
doesn't. Oh, okay, it doesn't. In the ideas of 108 years ago Newtonian gravity, which still taught to children in school up to a high school level, pre-higher education level, then it's a force that holds you to a ball. I mean, the fourth dimensional pseudo-geometric space-time bending as the uneven distribution of mass cause is asserted by Einstein goes, there is no force holding you to a water ball flying through a vacuum. That's not a force. But for you, if you're a high school educated person in the current age, you are taught the 108-year out-of-date rhetoric of Newton, ascribed falsely to him as a force that holds you to the ball that flies through space. Hope that's clear.
So you're telling me that somebody's imagination, a thought experiment, if you want to call it that, has tricked most of the known world that we're living on a ball orbiting in space? Really?
I don't know if I care about the hidden hand. It's in terms of. I know the lie, Neil, and I can point it out. Shout out to Jardo. Hi all, been a while, but still love you all. Hope you're all cured from the force of gravity. There is no force of gravity, Jardo, but thank you for the super chat. Also, shout out to Godzilla37, who gifted 5 memberships. Whoever picks those up.
I was
Good for you.
I was sniffing around relativity, and it's an asymptotically flat space-time. I wonder if that has anything to do with the equatorial plane.
Absolutely. I mean, when they describe space across its vastness as being flat, when utilizing the fourth dimensional reified space-time bending as a non-force force that you can think of as a force, then they disclaim how flat it must be. Now, I'm assuming that that's as a direct consequence of how the world is actually interpreted, because all roads lead to a flat Earth. And in the instances that we've currently been covering, or been previously covering over the last couple of weeks, it's because of the equatorial plane, which we're going to get into in a minute. Nice segue.
Thanks.
So 10th Man has been a busy boy talking to... should I say? Yeah, I should really cover this, because I'm going to put it in the live stream title. Once we've done what we're going to do, which is this, questions for AI, that 10th is going to cover, we will get back onto Astronavigation for beginners, but it may spill into the after show. So if you're watching this on an after show, then wonderful. Spin forward if that's specifically why you've come here, because I can't stand the guy's mic, so I'm going to relegate it to after show, as we've done 2 live shows on it. Anyway, this is what we're covering today. So, preamble, 10th, if you would, for what this is, and then hopefully you'll read through some of the answers that you've got from the AI in regards to the questions you've asked, and we'll discuss those answers after you've read them. How's that sound?
Yeah, good. You got ChatGPT, I guess, and then this is Perplexity AI, another AI tool, and it's really useful because this one gives you sources you can go back to and then go from there and even go, dig deeper. So the first question, if you've got it on the screen, is celestial equator. And it says the celestial equator is in the. Hello, there's feedback.
I'm going to blame D Rose. Go ahead. Hopefully that will resolve
Okay,
it.
celestial equator is an imaginary circle on the celestial sphere that is on the same plane as the Earth's equator. It is an abstract projection of a terrestrial equator into outer space and is a plane of reference in the equatorial coordinate system. The celestial equator is defined to be infinitely distant, so the ends of the semicircle always intersect the horizon due east and due west, regardless of the observer's position on Earth. The observer standing on Earth's equator visualizes the celestial equator as a semicircle passing through the zenith, the point directly overhead. As the observer moves north or south, the celestial equator tilts towards the opposite horizon. At the poles, the celestial equator coincides with the astronomical horizon. The celestial equator is 0 degrees declination, and the poles are plus 90 degrees and minus 90 degrees. Right ascension is the celestial equivalent of longitude and can be expressed in degrees. The intersection of the celestial meridian and the celestial equator is down from the zenith by an angle equal to the altitude. And then it shows some images there. So I'll pause there before the second question.
Okay. When they describe in the AI answer the same plane as the equator, should that not set off alarm bells for anybody reading it who's a baller? Because the equator is described as the outside edge of a sphere Earth on a particular point on a map. Now, we know it's derived from an elevation angle measurement to Polaris, and its extremity is the equator. But they don't know that. But in the description, it's saying it's a hypothetical imaginary line that's on the same plane as the equator. How can the equator have a plane if you believe you're on a ball?
Exactly. There's a problem there because that's going to be curved, and it's not.
This is what we're talking about. It's on screen in the second image on the right. This yellow surface. Now, if you want to take it as read that what they've depicted in the center of it, right next to where my mouse is a sphere.
Hang on. I got to interrupt you. The yellow is the ecliptic. It's the sun's path at their made up 23.5 degrees.
Sorry, my bad. The celestial equator is this other, whatever color it is, circle. Blue. Okay, my bad. Regardless, the example I was going to make doesn't change. So what they've got in the center of that, this flat plane, the equatorial plane, is a ball Earth. But the ground positions that you're measuring, if you're taking it as read that you're at the center of this ball Earth, because that's the actual plane and how it works, can extend out in terms of the plane and ground positions for stars all the way out on any of this surface. In other words, the ball in the middle with you in the middle of it, looking out at stars and measuring angles off a plane, has absolutely no use. It has no, it's surplus to requirements. You don't need this ball if you're standing at the center of the flat plane and measuring things that are on the surface, which are all reference to this plane. The globe Earth in the middle does nothing. It's literally useless.
Yeah, if you look at the third picture, which is the black background, and it says celestial equator, it's got an extension from the terrestrial Earth's equator, from the phony globe, all the way to the imaginary infinite celestial sphere. So in reality, they're showing you what they're doing here is they have a flat plane that they get all their measurements from. This would include the sextant, elevation angles. And then because of the way your dome of vision is, as shown here by the celestial sphere, they put you on the outside. So the stars that are on the celestial sphere is really where their Earth curve is. But to get the reference, you have to go to the center of Earth, which is silly, and need a flat plane to get your elevation angle. So they're using the sky and the arc of the sky to say you're on a globe, the protractors, so to say.
Shout out to Retro Bill. He says, greetings from the Crab Nebula. Celestial angling is great here on Europa. Once you crack the ice. Anyway, hugs and smooches, Retro Bill. Thank you very much for the super chat. Really appreciate the support.
The key words in this first part is the first, from the first get-go. The celestial equator is an imaginary circle on the celestial sphere that is on the same plane as the Earth's equator. So now you say, where do you get your measurements to all the stars? From the equatorial coordinate system, which is that plane. So they never get it from a curved surface. That is the destruction of the globe right there.
Any comments from any of the panel in this regard? Okay, so next question that was asked to ChatGPT by 10th Man in this regard was what
Perplexity, not ChatGPT.
Perplexity, my bad. What is the relationship between celestial equator and Earth's equator?
The answer is the celestial equator and the Earth's equator are on the same plane. And the celestial equator is an abstract projection of the terrestrial equator into outer space. Due to Earth's axial tilt, the celestial equator is inclined by about 23.4 degrees with respect to the ecliptic, which is the plane of the Earth's orbit. The celestial equator intersects another useful great circle, the ecliptic. The celestial equator is defined to be infinitely distant so that the ends of the semicircle always intersect the horizon due east and due west, regardless of the observer's position on Earth. An observer standing in the Earth's equator visualizes the celestial equator as a semicircle passing through the zenith, a point directly overhead. As the observer moves north or south, the celestial equator tilts towards the opposite horizon. At the poles, the celestial equator coincides with the astronomical horizon. Now, the astronomical horizon is basically your eye line horizon that the bubble section would give you.
52 people watching. Please smash that share button if you've not done so already. Warm welcome to all of you who've joined us so far. I know we're only 10 or 15 minutes into the live show, but it'd be nice to have 100 people watching, as always. Any comments from the panel in regards to the, again, description of an equator outside edge of a ball if you're reifying the heliocentric model into the ground that you're standing on as being on the same plane? The equator for a ball isn't a plane.
No one from Discord even.
Clearly. Okay, well.
Anyway, said that's a problem for them because their surface is supposed to be curved.
Okay, let's move on. Next, we've got, can the celestial equator be seen from Earth?
The answer from Perplexity AI with the references says the celestial equator is an imaginary circle on the celestial sphere that is on the same plane as the Earth's equator. It is an abstract projection of the terrestrial equator into outer space, and it is a plane of reference in the equatorial coordinate system. The celestial equator is defined to be infinitely distant, so the ends of the semicircle always intersect the horizon due east and due west, regardless of the observer's position on Earth. An observer standing on the Earth's equator visualizes the celestial equator as a semicircle passing through the zenith, the point directly overhead. As the observer moves north or south, the celestial equator tilts towards the opposite horizon. at the poles, the celestial equator coincides with the astronomical horizon. Astronomical objects near the celestial equator appear above the horizon from most places on Earth, but they culminate, reach the meridian highest near the equator. Therefore, the celestial equator can be seen from Earth.
Right.
So when they project the extension from the Earth's equator, it's a flat, larger disk that goes infinitely into the celestial sphere. Anything below that, you can't see those stars. Anything above that are the stars you see. And so it's like you standing outside and waiting for the stars to move so that you could see more stars. But they're saying that there's this celestial equator that is preventing any of the stars to be seen from below because they want to assume orbits and everything else. Whereas we know it's the stars that are moving, not the Earth.
Shout out to Jardo again, who's gifted 10 memberships. And Chronicles of the Cats, I think it's called. I'm sure that's Bobby Zines. Chronicles of the Unconvinced is one of the show names that Bobby Zines has, although his channel names changed subsequently. He's picked up a free membership, one of the 10. So welcome to all of you who picked up a channel membership. After the show's finished recording, you can watch the uncut and after show, or any clips that I make when they come out before the general public does. If, on the other hand, you weren't fortunate enough to pick up a free membership, then you can subscribe to my second channel, where 2 or 3 days later, you can watch the same show that the members watched, but a bit later. So you still get all the same material. It's not stuck behind a paywall. You just get it in advance if you're a member. So check that out. Lots of new members. Welcome, one and all. Okay.
Hey, real quick, I want to share something with you guys. I would like to share my family situation. So this morning, my wife is telling my daughter how to get something from the tube. She said, "See, that's the wonderful thing about gravity." My daughter looks at me like, "Don't say nothing, Dad." And I said, "You mean the density of the liquid, of the viscous liquid in there? When you hold it upside down, it falls down to the cap so that it can easily be squeezed out like you do toothpaste." And my wife rolls my eyes, and the first thing she says, "You and y'all make me sick." And I just laugh at her, So she knows I'm telling the truth, but out of habit, she says things like that. That's the wonderful thing about gravity. Just hold it upside down, and the stuff comes down to the bottom.
I mean, I don't want to sound like I'm being argumentative with you, D-Rose, but in a colloquial sense, often these terms get bandied around, and I don't mind when someone does that. Now, the issue, you have to clarify, why would D-Rose in this circumstance have an issue with gravity? Well, it's because up until a high school level, you're taught that it's a force holding you to the side of a spinning water ball. Now, the displacement of solids or liquids in air being described as gravity, as opposed to its weight in air, is fine. The idea that it's a bent fourth-dimensional pseudo-Riemannian space-time as a result of the uneven distribution of mass invented by Einstein, or a force holding you to a ball because of a falsely ascribed to Newton mass-attracting mass force, is absurd. But it doesn't alter that we do have this description that's been hijacked, where things that are more dense than the air that surround it will go down. In most circumstances, not all. There are exceptions to that, even that quote-unquote rule. But when people ascribe the word gravity to it, fine, whatever.
Okay,
Yeah,
so colloquially, it's fine. Okay, got it. Well, I think it goes back to what Brian or either Refractive told me. It's this thing called, I think it was Refractive said, there's a certain kind of gravity. I think he's called the specific gravity or something. I don't know what he had. It was like some type of adjective before the word gravity, which was hijacked relative density differential. But I get it. I know colloquially, yeah. All right. That's why she rolled her eyes at me. It was warranted.
Even the way she was using it, I'm sure she was just trying to describe movement in the vertical with respect to the horizontal.
Exactly.
Right.
And that is shorthand gravity, isn't it? No issue. I've got no issue with the word. I don't care what you call things falling through air. If you shorthand want to call it gravity, no worries. What's that? But that means I'm held to the side of a ball that's flying through a sky vacuum. No, it does not. But that's the issue. That's where we take umbrage, not with the colloquial use. So it's also true with science, right? To a vast extent, it's been so abused by the people who indoctrinate us into belief that we're on a spinning water ball that average Joe will describe maths as science. All the time. It happens all the time. Almost every video, every second video I watch will have somebody falsely ascribe valor to their maths with science. And that's just how the world is. And you can fight, you have to pick your battles. Basically, D, is what I'm trying to drive at here. Pick your battles. Sometimes it's just not worth it.
I know. I get it.
So in the image,
Hold on, because I get called a hyper analytical, pedantic, hyper specificity prick.
well,
Yeah, me too.
What you just said validated that.
I'm saying do as I say, not as I do, because I'm no different, you know. But that it's just for the audience.
Hey, just let it go, guys. You
Just
need
let
a
it
flat
go.
plane for it anyway.
Just let it go. 5,000 flat Earth debates later. Yeah, man, just let it roll.
So the second picture under this question, can the celestial equator be seen from Earth? The blue one, do you see that one, Nathan?
Yes.
Okay. Well, if you click on that, it'll get bigger. And you can see here that for the coordinate system for that plane, they use the vernal equinox as shown at the bottom right, and it's 0 degrees. And it meets the ecliptic and the celestial equator at 0 degrees. Someone's got their mic open. So at this point is how they get their star maps. So they need this plane all the way, a flat space, a flat plane in their space. Okay, I'm not saying I agree with that, but they just need a plane. And the time of year they use it to catalog the stars has to be at the vernal equinox, where Earth tilt is negated. So there's no Earth tilt, there's no any of that. All it is a plane. And then they catalog all the stars in relationship or reference to that plane. And that's throughout the rest of the year until, again, it doesn't matter. They always go by that reference. So when it goes to 23.4 north, as they say, which is really just the sun moving, not the Earth tilt, they still go back to the 0 plane that they need, that plane. So John's right.
Another shout out to Jardo, big spender. He says, nothing like gifting memberships to flush out the closet flat earthers. Thank you for the super chat, Jardo. And for all the memberships you've gifted.
And I got one.
Good morning, guys.
You, Mr. Acamano.
Hey, Chocolate.
Good morning, Chaco.
Right, so next question. No tilt to Earth on vernal equinox. Your
Answer.
Ed.
Okay, answer. During the vernal equinox, the Earth's axis is not tilted towards or away from the sun, which means that the perceived center of the sun's disk is at the same plane as the Earth's equator. This means that the subsolar point, the point on the Earth's surface where the sun is directly overhead at noon, is on the equator. Therefore, the length of day and night is nearly equal at all latitudes. The equinoxes are caused by the fact that the Earth's axis is tilted by 23.5, but it's really 4. But during the equinoxes, the tilt's orientation with respect to space does not change during the year. So they have to throw in some falsity here. But basically, the reference, the coordinate system that they use as a reference is the vernal equinox, where Earth tilt is negated. You have one solid plane that you get all your angles from for the cataloging of the stars, because now you're going to star map as the reference rather than the Earth. And that's the RA and DEC, the system, versus the horizontal coordinate system, which is alt-as, which is observer-based. So right here, it's telling you the sun is directly over what they call the equator, this flat plane, and that's the time they catalog everything. And it's based on that reference, not when it's doing its southerly movement in the sky in the winter towards Capricorn or Cancer in the north.
They also ascribe a causal relationship to the apologetic that they make after the fact. So to back engineer the movements that they've observed in the stars, they ascribe this tilt. but in the description that the AI gave you, unless I'm very much mistaken, it said the cause was the tilt. You're like, no, that's how you've back engineered your model to work with what you've observed, as opposed to a causal influencer. But that's what it said. It said, I'm sure it said cause.
No, it says the equinoxes are caused by the fact that the Earth's axis is tilted by 23.5 degrees.
Right,
Yeah, you're right.
Even the AI uses telling language.
It's a cool story.
Yeah, well, it's fact. That's the telling language, because of the fact.
We're talking about we're talking about shadows, right? So we're talking about the sun moving throughout the day when it's directly overhead. It's the least shadow you're going to get because it's directly overhead. But as it moves away from you, it's casting shadows longer and longer up until it goes far enough away to where we call it sunset. The afternoon shadows are very long from trees on an open field, but at noontime they're not long at all because the sun's directly. So the sun is moving, but they're trying to say the opposite.
I just had a secret message from Jardo. I haven't really, I'm making it up, but he said that in exchange for all those free memberships, he insists that you all smash the share button if you haven't done so already, so that the 77 people watching who've joined as a direct result of the call to action earlier, where I asked people to share. Thank you very much for joining. If you've hit one of those links that have been shared out by all the good people who are watching, and a very warm welcome if you've just got here. Please share the show if you haven't done so already. Next question.
What is the vernal equinox and how does it differ from the autumnal equinox? The answer is the vernal equinox and the autumnal equinox are two significant points in the Earth's orbit around the sun, making the beginning of spring and autumn, respectively. Here's how they differ. So that's what they're saying it is. So the vernal equinox, also known as the spring equinox, it occurs around March 21st in the northern hemisphere. On the vernal equinox, the Earth's axis is not tilted towards or away from the sun, resulting in nearly equal amount of daylight and darkness at all latitudes. The subsolar point, to the point on the Earth's surface where the sun is directly overhead at noon, is on the equator during the vernal equinox. It makes a start of spring in the northern hemisphere. The autumnal equinox, also known as the fall equinox, it occurs around September 22nd in the northern hemisphere. Like the vernal equinox, the Earth's axis is not tilted towards or away from the sun during the autumnal equinox, resulting in a nearly equal amount of daylight and darkness at all latitudes. The subsolar point is on the equator during the autumnal equinox, just like during the vernal equinox. It marks the start of autumn in the northern hemisphere. In summary, the vernal equinox and the autumnal equinox are 2 points in the year when the Earth's axis is not tilted towards or away from the sun, resulting in nearly equal amounts of daylight and darkness in all latitudes. Vernal equinox marks the beginning of spring, while the autumnal equinox marks the beginning of autumn. And they suggest some other questions if you want to go. But that was enough for me because, see, the sun has a circuit, and it moves 365 days. It goes to its highest point and then crosses the equator and then goes to its lowest point and then comes back around for the vernal equinox, making it a year. It's the sun moving. They're trying to say it's the Earth spinning.
Right. And it's adjusted with tilt other than at this point where it matches. And then that's where they take all the mapping as reference points from, right? This is the only point that it works, isn't it?
Yeah, well, that's the tell. If you're going to say we're going to map the sky and know where the stars are always by an angle measurement, but we got to wait until the vernal equinox where there is no tilt, so we can work from a plane that matches the equatorial plane, the terrestrial one of the Earth, because we got to extend it to the celestial sphere with the celestial equator, which is imaginary. Yeah, they got to wait for that day where everything is based on the plane and you get your angles to stars, and that's the catalog they go by, no matter what time of year.
You've got the sun essentially at 90 degrees to the position, and the position in this respect is going to be the minimum elevation angle measurement to Polaris. So at the point that those two overlap, this is something that Brian's been trying to communicate with me. It's only just starting to make sense to me, to be honest. But that's the point that the two overlap, which is why they, at the point of conjunction, or the point that they converge, or whatever you'd call it, when you've got the sun directly overhead at the point that if you were measuring an angle to Polaris, it would be at its minimum, otherwise known as the equator. Well,
it has to be.
That's just the two overlap points for two flat plane systems to work in conjunction with one another, isn't it?
Yeah, well, it has to be because latitudes are measured from the center of Earth, not from the surface. So if you go to the equator,
yes, but
zero is the equator.
Right, exactly. So you need it to be overhead at that point for all of the timings to make sense. But but they're cross-referenced to that in all instances, and then the way they adjust for it in the model is to tilt the Earth itself, because obviously in that model we're not stationary and measuring angles to Polaris off a flat plane. We're on a edge of a ball tilted towards the sun, or not in this instance, because it's at the equinox.
Yeah, just for the listener, all you gotta do is realize they've never used a curved surface to achieve an angle because they can't, and they've always cited it needs to be a plane. Well, that's a tell.
Quick shout out to Jardo again. One
tell.
second. Just shout out to Jardo, who says, "Don't forget the cause and effect relationship according to heliocentrism is the northern winter is caused by a closer sun." Again, these are apologetics after the fact, Jardo. So they tilt the Earth in terms of this is it's Kepler's, right? It's Kepler's elliptical orbits is what you're describing. You're saying that based on the system that Kepler infers, you've got the sun in the model further away from the northern hemisphere in the summer, right? Based on their tilt. And the only reason that you've got that system with elliptical orbits is because of Easter. So Kepler's task is to figure out when a particular alignment's going to fall next year, so that they can say next year Easter will be on this date, whatever it is, one weekend after the full moon that precedes it, or something like that. Well, there's a certain star alignment that comes before that point that sets the date for Easter. Well, the models that they were using with circular orbits to predict the movement of the stars didn't quite work for Easter. So they kept getting it wrong. The church kept getting it wrong. So they needed a better system. So the elliptical orbit is developed by Kepler so that by mapping out the trajectory in that fashion, they got a better predictive capability for when that alignment would come, so that they could say Easter's going to be on this day and it would be correct, rather than them saying to the people Easter's going to be on this day and then it comes around 8 months later because they predicted it when they predicted it and the alignment hasn't come yet, so it's going to be one full week after that because it's or even one full month because it's the first full moon, then the following Sunday after that. So if the star alignment hasn't happened and then there isn't a full moon, it could be a massive chunk of time before then and the next Easter. They could be massively out, in other words. So hence, elliptical orbits are born. But that doesn't mean, it's like earlier when they're ascribing the tilt to being the cause. It's like, no, trying to figure out how to best predict where the stars are going to be in a year's time doesn't mean that Earth is moving in an elliptical orbit when Kepler comes up with that way of fathoming what he's looking at to make a better prediction. Doesn't mean we're in an elliptical orbit. Doesn't mean we're further away from this. That's meaningless. Just one man who's saying maybe if we describe it like this, we'll get a better idea of what will happen in the future in terms of where those stars will be. That's all it means. Doesn't mean we're moving in Go on.
Say from a flat plane.
Yeah.
I kept on wanting to say from
exactly.
a flat plane.
Yeah, that's the common denominator is the flat plane for sure. Hey, Adam, are you there? I want to get Adam on this.
Yeah,
Adam. So Passover is really Easter. Easter's Passover, right? So the whole point that Jews were using a lunar method for Passover, right? But when you use the sun, you're going to have a difference, right?
Yeah, so Passover's different each year, isn't it? Because you are using the phases of the moon to determine it, as opposed to the more Christian way of arranging the calendar, which was to just remove that Judaic way of viewing things and move to just the passage of the sun to be the telling of time. Hence the need to convert. Hence why Easter moves still.
Did you all follow that? Yeah, we all followed that. Adam's really good. Yeah, he is, isn't he? He's even put a diagram up.
Well, just put that up for what the super chat was about, just so you've got that description there on, so you can just see the claim. You know,
Right.
this
When you extrapolate out
in-
the Kepler maths for ellipses and then model it and describe with a physicality to Earth the positional value of Earth versus the sun, this is what you get. And as Jardot said, further away in summer.
But that would be calculating the angles from the sun. If the sun was a flat plane and the Earth was a ball spinning around it, is just reversing the calculation. Instead of having Earth as the flat plane and the sun being a ball spinning around it, just a reversal.
Right. So what you're saying is this elliptical motion described, or as we are describing it, would actually be the plane of reference.
Well, that red line that cuts through the middle of it is a dead giveaway usually.
Right. Okay. Cool.
So they've reversed everything is the point. But when it comes to if you're going to jump into this topic and do some good research, you're going to find out they need a plane for everything. And the globe is surplus to requirement because you can't get an elevation angle from a curved surface. So it's the end of the globe.
Cool. I can imagine that probably took several hours.
It's the end of the globe as we know it.
Well, we're going to
Back
carry
to you,
on.
Chocolate. That was the William Tell overture. That was the tell.
Okay, we're going to get back into this video. So we are going to do a bit of horrendous mic work from Astronavigation for beginners. So as is always the case with any videographer that we cover, please let this videographer know at Nathan Oakley 1980 sent me. Don't knock his mic. Don't knock the 60 hertz transformer buzz that's coming through his audio. Just let him know we responded.
Don't hate on his mic skills, man. Just because you're nice with it.
That's just simple geometry. Think about it. This is just one line, right? These two lines are parallel to each other. This is parallel to this, obviously, because they're coming from infinity, right? That's what we discussed earlier. So these two lines are parallel.
What he discussed when he told you weren't making any assumptions. Remember that assumption I told you to make? No, not 93 million miles. Infinite. So it's parallel. Remember that assumption I told you to assume when we weren't assuming stuff? Yeah. Moving on.
Then this angle has got to be equal to this angle.
Pay attention to Brian's logic. Brian is pointing out at the moment, and rightly so, that this assumption that he's just told you to employ, when you take it away from them with bad moon shadow, or anything else that destroys their parallel light rays, the whole kit and caboodle falls apart at this point. Now, Brian's right to be banging that drum. It's important to understand how the claim distances are eradicated when you take the moon and what it can do with shadows, like described here with Eratosthenes, how it eradicates their notions of infinite distances, let alone the heliocentric distances.
Right?
No,
Now,
it doesn't quite do that. What it does is it destroys the pre-assumption they make through Eratosthenes first. Because Eratosthenes' initial statement is to say it is either big and very far away or small and local. And that's what measuring it will be. It can be one of these two things if we interpret the results like this. That's what he's saying, which is why when the bad moon shadow comes in, it's small and local, giving exactly the same as big and far away with their assumptions. And that's what destroys Eratosthenes for me. He can't move on because his own determinative logic that he's set up has been demonstrated to be false by a different luminary.
Sure, but where Brian steps in there is to say that their assumption must hold true for the light to be parallel, and by demonstrating the local shadow, bad moon shadow example, you're eradicating their notion that must hold true for an infinite distance to have parallel light.
So with the assumption of parallel light, can you get an angle from a curved surface?
No. You're going to need a flat earth for that angle, regardless of if the light's parallel or not.
Nathan, I put up 3 pictures of Master B that I've been putting up in sequence of this video for this very topic.
indeedy weedy on screen now.
Okay.
In terms of what the last one represents is a hotspot, if you want to call it that, above the sun. So in the dog cam footage, that's where the sun is. You can see the light coming down in crepuscular, or however you say the word, rays from the sun. But directly beneath it, you've got one hotspot. Well, this, if you were standing beneath these clouds, the sun would be described as being at your zenith, 90 degrees to your position. If you're lying on your back, it would be directly above you if you look up. Well, that notion of having infinitely distant light with the light rays all coming in straight, look, there you go. It's there. It's right in front of your very eyes. That is absolutely not the case. But it must hold true for them to transpose, as John just pointed out, a curved surface that won't give you an angle to the equatorial plane. That's what all this bullshit's about. But look, use your eyes. You know, right before your very eyes now on screen. This is not what we have. We don't have parallel light. Go ahead, Chocolate.
I always thought that dog cam footage with that hot spot right underneath the sun was a little weird, being that we're shown these cartoons of the entire side of the Earth being covered by the sun in one shot.
Well, that's the point. No one's ever seen parallel light. We only see diverging light, and the other two pictures show it. And then the hot spot is the GP of the sun. But as you said, Chocolate, if it's so big and so far away, and this parallel light is hitting the Earth, why is that such a tight GP of the sun directly over that part of the Earth?
Yeah, it's definitely not very far away. But I still it's weird. That sighting is weird to me. It doesn't make a lot of sense. It's just like it feels like my eyes are playing tricks on me. I'm not saying that it was a trick footage, just that it's really strange that you're seeing that right there. Like,
well, Armin, are you not just
shouldn't even be there at all like that? Like, it's just really strange that it looks like that.
Yeah, but on Earth,
it doesn't work with the heliocentric model. I'll give you that.
Good, but on Earth, when the sun is, when you're under those clouds on Earth, if those clouds were removed, that would cast very little shadow on the tree that it's directly over. As the sun moves on its circuit, then you're going to see the angles that the shadow of the tree casts, because the sun is moving to cause that shadow. So this is the GP of the sun. This is exactly how it all works.
Yeah, but why is there a specific light spot on the clouds like that? That's really strange.
Why is it strange? It's a local, smaller sun, obviously, compared to a big...
Sorry, you know what the sun is... Hold on, this is getting dangerously close to you making some positive claims there, 10th. Sorry, small and local. What is it exactly?
Well, when you...
literal spotlight?
Well, I'll try. As Chocolate said, if I'm contrasting it to their big and far, it should be one light, one of these, spots, the whole Earth. But obviously, we're only looking at this as a very small spot on the Earth. So I'm contrasting to what they're saying, big and far, to small and local. That's what I'm saying.
Falsification doesn't require a replacement.
That's fine, but that's what
that little spot is half the Earth.
I don't know why there's a little spot at all. Why, like, even with the local sun, that doesn't make any sense to me. It just makes it look like it's a spotlight. What? Very weird to me.
Well, the question that we need to ask the ball earthers is, how do they model that hotspot, given that they claim that all light rays are parallel? Someone model that out, get your rumpus drawing, your orthographic drawing, put your sun in. Remember to put it relatively to scale, so the sun's massive and the Earth's tiny, and all the rays are parallel. Somebody model how that hotspot gets caused if all the rays are parallel, and they'll start drawing non-parallel lines, and then start
Right. Well, that's my point. It definitely doesn't make any sense in a heliocentric model, but that
It
doesn't.
debunks the model.
We know, like, why the hell it even looks like that.
It debunks
That
the
would be
model,
the
but they just don't
tangent
accept it.
That would be the tangent plane. If you were standing in the center of that hot spot, that would be the tangent plane.
Oh, it's a
And all the
tangent
pictures
point. It's
in
not a
that would
hot
be
spot.
parallel.
Good one. It's not.
The
It's not a
the
hot
genus
spot.
point?
It's the tangent point. It's God saying, "It is here."
Genus point.
It's a tangent point.
I can't make it make any sense in any model, really, but it definitely doesn't make sense in a heliocentric model. That's my position.
Okay, we covered that.
It
Let's
can't
move on.
create-
Let's move
it
on.
can't create-
Astronavigation for beginners.
Eratosthenes now knew how far he sent this guy, right? So let's say he sent him, I'm not going to go into the specifics, but let's say he sent him a distance of, I don't know, let's say X miles, right? And told him, go X miles away from this well and observe the sun when I tell you to, okay?
I'm going to
Now, let's
spin past this. It's just
complete-
making this
because
up.
these are the Earth's surface. You see that? X miles on the Earth's surface corresponds to this angle A. So then all he had to do was ask himself, well, there's 360 degrees in the circle, right? So
Angle on the
if A,
surface.
Yeah.
He just said angle on the surface.
Yeah, he
He's
did.
done.
Yep. There isn't one.
angle A degrees corresponds to X miles, how much does 360 degrees correspond to?
Yeah, that's the measurement of your 1 degree giving you 60 nautical miles. Why is that? Well, because the movement of the Polaris that's used to give you the grid that you're referencing would decrease at that rate. As you move away from Polaris, yeah, the measurement that you take through the protractor decreases. That's to say that Polaris drops towards the horizon 1 degree as you back away from it 60 nautical miles. Well, that measurement taken off a flat plane is now being described as the turning of the ball Earth and not the protractor taking the measurement from the surface. Now, in order for all of that to work, i.e. for the protractor to become the globe, you need all of the preceding nonsense of parallel light and wells and angles from surfaces that are curved. All this garbage that doesn't make any sense and is mathematically wrong is necessitated to put you in the center of the protractor that you've used to take the measurement in the first place and call that protractor the globe.
Right? So that's
That
just
checks out.
360 into X divided by A. And if you do that, you get the circumference of the Earth. Because
What you're actually doing is measuring declination of a star that doesn't move as you back away from it till it disappears over the horizon. That's what you've actually done. Then you've called that transposition to the center of a globe Earth the rotating of a globe Earth.
360 degrees, if you went around like this 360 degrees, you'd be going around the entire Earth once. Let me show that again. This is important. An angle A, right, if it corresponds to this much on the Earth's surface, and you know that this is also angle A.
Go on.
Yeah, he's saying angle from the Earth's surface. He's detailing a flat plane. So
Yep.
if the flat plane at this angle is different from the flat plane at this angle, then it's a ball.
Yes, that's precisely
That's
what
his
he's saying.
logic.
Good summary.
By geometry, right? All you got to do to find out, so this is X, right? So all you got to do to find out this entire distance, right, is just do some simple proportional mathematics. So 360 degrees. This angle X, sorry, this distance X on the Earth's surface, we say in technical terms, subtends an angle A at the Earth's center. This distance X subtends some angle at the Earth's center, which we call A. All right. So if you
So the globe Earth is your protractor. You're in hell at the molten iron core. And the angles that weren't angles because they were coming from curves are actually going to relate to the center of Earth with you taking the angle from hell. All makes sense because the light's infinitely distant, coming in parallel, and we can translate the angle that came from a curve that you couldn't measure, in reality taken from a flat plane, down to the center of the ball that has now become the protractor, with you standing in hell. Simple as that. I mean, it only took 15 minutes of a second part of 4 videos to get to this stage where we can now talk about being on a flat plane but in the middle of a protractor, a mean globe Earth.
If you want to know how much the entire Earth is, right, you just do some proportional maths. This whole thing is 360 degrees. A is some fraction of that, right, which corresponds to this distance x. So all you got to do, if you want to find out the circumference of the Earth, is equal to 360 multiplied by x divided by a. That's it. And then you
It
have the
seems like he's
circumference of the Earth.
describing how far away the stars are in his mind, and then changing how far away the stars are to the surface of Earth and making the stars infinite in his
Correct.
own mind.
If I take an angle with a protractor to Polaris and then back away from it and take a note of how many miles that is, and then I keep doing it and it keeps remaining the same, every time I take a measurement, I've taken a 1 degree measurement off a flat plane of that star dropping towards the horizon. If I take all those measurements and then say, right, okay, when I get to the limit, I can extrapolate that data out of a flat Earth measurement to the Polaris star that's now at the horizon, and say that each of those 1 degrees I measured off a flat plane are actually 1 degree of a turn of a sphere Earth. Yeah, that's what he's doing. That's what this is. That's all the swindle is.
Earth. And if you have the circumference of the Earth, you can then calculate the radius of the Earth, because you know that the circumference is just equal to 2 pi r. So if you find the circumference, you can find the radius. And so that's how Eratosthenes calculated the radius of the Earth
using a flat plane
and its circumference. Or rather, first he did the circumference, and
he first needed to measure angles off a flat plane, and then he needed to transpose it by turning the angles he measured off a flat plane into curve angles that aren't angles, and then saying that now we've got a flat plane in the middle of the ball Earth that's actually the protractor we used in the first instance when measuring angles off a flat plane. But if we take all the light to be parallel, all hitting at the same line across Earth, when in reality we don't see that with light, then the ball Earth works if I take it to be the protractor. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy.
and from there he
The other
inferred
thing
the
you have
radius
to
of the
do- The other thing he has to do, Nathan, is he has to use and apply Euclidean geometry to be able to then perform some sums. They call it trigonometry, which means that when people like the flat Earth, for example, they want to apply bendizontal and curved straight line for reasons like, I don't know, when they talk about level, it means that you can't do that, because if Eratosthenes is applying trigonometrical sums to give him numbers that he then transposes onto a globe model, well, you can't have it both ways. You're either using Euclidean geometry in one instance, therefore negating the use of non-Euclidean geometry in the other, or you're using non-Euclidean geometry in the other instance, and that negates Eratosthenes. Either way, both cannot be true simultaneously at the same time.
Well, they're not, are they? I mean, you got it right in terms of the statement of truth in the first instance, which is their use of the rhetoric and geometry, which is held true in all of their mathematics. That would be having straight lines be straight. When you say they can't have it both ways, you're talking about the nonsense and lies from people like Craig. That would be convicted, violent, criminal, woman beater Craig McNeil of the Flat Earth channel, who doesn't sit in line with the geometric principles of things like horizontal being a straight line. They want to bend it, even though their geometry then bends and fails as a result of their lies. But ultimately, what we deal with here is the actual rhetoric of the globe Earth in terms of how its geometry is utilising a flat plane, not bendizontal, as would be disseminated to an audience by convicted violent offenders who beat women with offensive weapons. like Craig McNeil of the Flat Earth channel on screen now.
But ultimately that is the paradox, isn't it? Like, because if you believe that we're on a sphere because you change the meaning of the word level from a straight line to a curved line so that you can change the geometry, then it means that you can't have Eratosthenes because that negates him. And that's what they've got to do. They'll have it, but they'll argue it both ways depending on which argument they're having. And when it's pointed out to them, they'll pretend that the contradiction doesn't exist. They'll just ignore it.
Well, the contradiction lies in the point that we're pointing out that precedes that, though, which is to say that at the point in his example, he's stating explicitly that he's getting 90 degrees from a curved surface. Well, that leaves you with a cognitive break because it's not a straight line giving you an angle that is required in order to do this geometry. Now, in the geometry, we know it's straight, and that's what geometry is in this regard when you talk about the Euclidean principle that you've highlighted. But what they do is see that in order for it to work, like with Al-Biruni as a more simplistic example, Al-Biruni takes a flat earth and gets the height of the mountain with basic trig. Great. But then he goes up the mountain and bends the surface that he used flat to get the height of the mountain. Well, what that leaves you with cognitively is bendizontal. Now, that's an adverse effect that anti-flat earthers and woman beaters like Craig McNeil will have to face as a cognitive break because they're violating their own geometric principle when they tell you that they're getting 90 degrees from a curve. So they say, well, you can get 90 from a curve, it's curvizontal. No, you can't.
Nobody claimed the ground underneath the mountain is curved.
Yeah, when Al-Biruni's measuring it to get the height, and it must be flat for him to do the triangles, to do the trig, to get the height, then nobody's claiming it's curved. Even though he's going to go up the mountain and say that it's curved when he derives a radius from the curved surface that was flat when measuring the height. That leaves them, cognitively, with a break that says, bendizontal then. No, just lies about a globe Earth and actual flat Earth measurements. But as I say, if you're a woman beater and a convicted violent criminal described by a judge as outrageously violent, like Craig McNeil, that cognitive break will make its way to your audience as just outright deceit. But what do you expect from a woman beater, Anthony?
Indeed, but let's just do a full stop in a new paragraph for 1 minute. When I was listening to this guy talking, this Indian guy talking yesterday, it was like deja vu, but not my own experience. He was describing his video is basically worded as though he's watched our show, and he's almost responding word for word, point by point to the things that we say. It was almost preordained that he had to respond in that way. And I was thinking, how old is this video? And I thought, it's as if he wrote this video yesterday or a week ago, and it's 2 years ago. And then it dawned on me, maybe it's possible that we're not necessarily living in a parallel universe, but he wrote this video for somebody else that's not us, but similar to us, that was working on the same angle, the same attack line that we're dealing with now. Maybe he's responding to somebody just like us, but in an earlier world, where they were at the same point that we're at right now. And he was literally responding to them. And I'm looking at the parallels thinking, it's almost like he's talking directly to us, but 2 years ago couldn't have been us. But maybe it was somebody else that was in the same journey that we're in right now has realized the nonsense, and he's talking in a parallel world. Did anybody else get that feeling?
Are you high right now?
Honestly, when you get that feeling of deja vu, it's a weird feeling that you can't
Please don't
describe.
repeat it. Please, God, please spare us. Please don't repeat it all.
Classic response, Nathan. Love it.
Well, on that note, I'm going to say a huge, massive, enormous thank you to both Discord and G+ Pals. If you're watching on either Nathan Oakley 1980 or Nathan Oakley premiering streams, then stay tuned as there will be an after show to follow. Unfortunately, though, if you are watching this live, this is where we bid you farewell. So another massive thank you to all of you. Smashed the super chat, liked, commented, shared, subscribed, joined as a member with gifted memberships. Check out the after shows if you've got a free membership out of Jardo. Thank you very much for gifting them and all that good stuff. Once again, thank you to Discord and G+ for making today's live show possible. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I will see you all in the next video.
What a lovely day!